Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know I love talking to the people behind the scenes of the musical theater world. The actors and the creators may get all the glory, but without the accountants and set designers and all the others we may not know the names of, the show is incomplete. I am very interested in learning more about our next guests in the world of Broadway makeup design. So let's waste no more time and introduce Kirk Cambridge Del Pesche to the show. Kirk, hello.
Hey, Jean-Paul, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
No problem. Yeah, well, I saw you on LinkedIn and I followed you and you followed me back and I saw what you did and I was like, this is interesting. I've never talked to anybody and I really would love to learn more. And you know what? Let's introduce you to the rest of the world. So thank you for answering me that day.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So before we get into everything about you and your life and your career, we want a 30-second bio of Kirk. So in 30 seconds, who is Kirk?
Oh my God, where do we start? Okay, so I was born in the island of St. Vincent in the Grenadines. I moved to the States when I was 20. I started working for MAC Cosmetics. I worked for MAC for 10 years. I've done television, I've done magazine, I've done editorials, I've done fashion. Obviously have done Broadway, opera, ballet. I have celebrity clients. I worked for MAC, I worked for Bare Minerals, I worked for NYX for a small period of time. I worked for Brooklyn Museum at one point as a merchandise manager. And then in 2 years, a year and a half ago, Cookie Jordan, who is a wig designer that I've worked with for over 15 years. And I worked with her on Fela and Les Mis tour, and I've done a bunch of other things for her. I did High School Musical, the tour for her. And so I had left makeup for 7 years. And I came back. She said to me, I want you to help me with a project. And I came back. And so now in this, sorry, this is more than 30 seconds, but so I came back last year with the reopening of Broadway with a show called Mary Wise, which was done by the Public Theater for Shakespeare in the Park. And I designed the makeup for the show and I ran the show as a hair and makeup supervisor. And from that, she said to me, I'm gonna give you your Broadway premiere. And so that was Trouble in Mind with LaShawne's. That was for the Roundabout Theater. And so I designed that makeup for the entire cast. And a week later, I was designing makeup for Clyde's, which was done by Second Stage Theater, and that was starring Uzo. And a month later, I was designing and running the show for Skeleton Crew, which was done by Manhattan Theater Club. And that was starring Felicia Richard, who won a Tony for it. And then it just went on. I did Skin of Our Teeth for Lincoln Center. I did, oh my God, I did Birthday Candles with Deborah Messing for Roundabout Theater. I did for Colored Girls. I did POTUS. I did Strange Loop. I mean, now I'm on Into the Woods. I did Into the Woods for City Center off Broadway, and now the Broadway version. I am there again, and I designed the makeup as well as under Cookie Jordan, as well as I am the makeup supervisor for the show.
Wow, you've been keeping busy. From the sounds
Jean-Paul, I mean, it's interesting. I will tell you, I want to start out by where my faith lies. Mm-hmm. And so in 2019, I was in the park. I was staying near Central Park for New Year's. And on the 31st of December, I went for a walk in the park. And I said, God, I am going to do something I've never done before. I am going to let you run the ship. And I'm not going to utter a word. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to let you guide it and let's see what happens, right? And so I'm very not controlling, but I'm very calculating on how I do things in my life. And so everything has to be set in a certain way. All of the dots have to be, all the T's have to be crossed and the I's dotted and blah, blah, blah. And I decided that I wanted to do things very differently in this new chapter of my life. And the next morning I woke up and I got an email from a skincare company that had done a review on Instagram. And they said, we'd love for you to do a skincare campaign for us. And I was just like, I just had this, I modeled for years when I was younger. I never got a skincare campaign. And I was like, I had a conversation with God last night, and this morning I woke up to an ad campaign, and I ended up doing 9 ad campaigns for this company. They're called April Skin, and they're a Korean-based brand. And that started this whole movement into what my life has become.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, congratulations on all of it and what you've done. First of all, I want to say thank you for telling me how to say Fela, because I've been trying to say it wrong the entire time. I played on this station and I've been saying it wrong. So
what do you say?
I was saying I say Fela. I wasn't sure if it was
Fela Kuti.
Because I love that show. That's a fun show.
Oh my God.
Well,
my friend Adesela Osakalumi played Fela on the tour, and he was the understudy on Broadway.
Wow. That would be, that's a show I would love to have seen, but maybe one day, but who knows? But I want to take it back first. I want to take it back to the beginning. Were you always into theater or musical theater and that sort of thing growing up, or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
I was obsessed with numbers. So as a kid, I was either going to be a doctor or an accountant.
So
and
close.
I went right, and I went to school for accounting because I had a thing with blood, like cutting. Like back then, I had a thing. Blood just geeked me out, and like internals and stuff was kind of gross.
Yeah.
And so I took to numbers, and I went to school for accounting, and I worked for accounting. I worked for the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a junior accountant, and then I moved to the States, and I modeled while I was back in the Caribbean. And so creative part, I started taking lessons from makeup artists back home because I didn't like the fact that makeup artists that were doing the shows, they only went for the models who were known. So like me, because I was new and I was from St. Vincent. So when we traveled to Trinidad or one of the bigger islands, they would ignore me. They would wait for me to be last. And I was like, you know what? No. So I went with my face done every time. And so when I came to America, I landed on August 10th. And 2 days later, I was in the mall with my sister at a Mac counter. And she was like, my sister was being a little bit of a bitch. And the woman, I was like, listen, the woman's makeup, because the woman's makeup was like 2 shades lighter than her skin tone. And my sister's like, well, there's no way she can help me. And she just can't even match her own foundation. I was like, but it's freedom of choice. I was like, this is how she sees herself. So you need to trust that she can do the same for you. And so the lady liked how I put that. And so she came to me after the transaction was over and she says, are you looking for a job? And I said, yeah. She's like, okay, come in for an interview tomorrow. And I literally started working in the US the week I landed in the country.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's been a journey. Trust.
So you've got a job now. You're in the States. You're doing makeup there. I'm curious how you got from there to into the woods. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in between. But so now, where are the steps?
I've been obsessed with Into the Woods since '97, right? When they first did the first production. I love the music. The music just told the story of all of these fairy tales that you grew up with, but it was done in such a different way. And that really spoke to me. It's like Wicked, like how they twisted that. And even, just so for me, it was so wonderful. It's wonderful music, wonderful singing, wonderful storytelling. And so I've been obsessed with it since then, since before coming to the States. And so I land, I work for MAC Cosmetics, I become a product specialist, I become an assistant manager, I become a manager, I started doing fashion shows, I started doing different things. And then I was running MAC at Flatiron, and Thelma Pillard is the designer who created the hair and makeup for Phantom of the Opera. She is a Black woman who is Barbadian. And so she comes in to shop for the show, and we start talking. And she's like, "You're West Indian?" I said, "I am. I'm from St. Vincent." And we, the dialect comes out at that point. And so her dialect is very, very distinct. And so we start talking, and she starts, every time she comes into shop, we talk a little bit more. And then she pulls me in to one of the performances of Phantom of the Opera. And then I got to go backstage and I got to work with her a little bit. And she always said to me, she said, "You have to carve your own way out in this world." She said, you can't look at what anybody else is doing. What you do and what you're bringing to this is different to what I do. So bring what you do. She said, also make sure that your culture stays a part of everything that you do. And to this day, that conversation still stays with me, right? And so I go through and I did fashion, I've done fashion shows, I designed makeup for fashion shows around the world. I did, all this stuff, magazine covers, you name it, music videos, did it. And so when I left MAC in like 2010. I was just tired, I was burnt out, I was just exhausted. The company started changing a little bit. And I was just like, there was too many stores popping up everywhere. And I didn't like that. I thought that when one is to be exclusive, one needs to have small, just minimal stores and to maximize. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I walked away from the company, and I was sitting in my chaise the next morning. The morning after, I'm telling you, it's like pregnancy. It's the morning after. And the morning after, I got a phone call. And preface this by, I met LaChanze, who won the Tony for A Color Purple. So a friend of mine my friend Fatima Thomas was her makeup artist, and Fatima was not able to do her for something. So she was getting married, and Fatima suggested me for her makeup. And so she and I were talking on the phone for like 2 or 3 weeks, never met her, didn't know who she was, just knew she was getting married. And so I met her the day of her wedding. Wow. And so I did her makeup. She was beautiful. Her mother was like, "I've never seen my daughter look more radiant, da, 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 da." And LaChanze looked at me and she says, "I'm going to take you places." And, you kind of hear that so much in your life that it's just become like, it's like seeing a penny on the side of the street. You hear it all the time. You see it all the time. So you're just like, whatever. I was like, okay, great. Just give me my check. I'm gone. Yeah. 2 weeks later, she got back from her interview, and I didn't know. I wasn't really following theater like that. And 2 weeks later, she calls me and she says, I'm going to be in The Color Purple on Broadway, and Oprah Winfrey is one of the producers, and we're doing a photo shoot for O Magazine, and I suggested you. So I now become the makeup artist for press for Color Purple. So whenever they have press, I'm the one doing the makeup for press, right? Yeah. So doing LaChanze, doing press, the whole nine. And so then I became, after doing months of like photo shoots for every magazine you could think of, I started doing more shoots outside of Color Purple for O Magazine, because I've built a rapport with the photo shoot editor and the director of photos and blah, 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 blah. And so they really liked me. So I started doing all these projects with O Magazine outside of that. And so in 2011, I became a contributor to O Magazine. So there's a whole spread. There's a whole spread in the thing. It was a whole drama. And I said, I need to find that. I need to find that again. But I lost my issue. Anyway,
Oh no, what? You lost your
I,
issues.
I have, it's,
Oh wow.
you know, you know,
Yeah, I know.
see, if it was digital back then I wouldn't have a problem.
Mhm.
And so now I leave Mac, and in the process, yes, I leave Mac, and I get a phone call, and they're like, we have this client who's a celebrity. She's looking for a new makeup artist, and you came highly recommended. And they're like, you don't need to bring a resume. I was like, okay, great. So I go in, and those rotating chairs, those like what you're sitting on, those
Yeah.
office chairs.
Yeah.
So the back of the chair was facing the door.
Yeah.
And it was very ominous. And so I walk in, there's nobody else. There's like, oh, she's waiting for you. So I open the door, I close the door behind me. And the room is like, it's like a well-lit room. And there's this chair, the back of the chair. And then the chair swings around. And there is Eartha Kitt.
Wow.
And she looks me up and down. And she says, you do. And then I was escorted out of the room. So the first work day I go in, she was doing Mimi LaDuck, which was an off-Broadway production. And I went in to do her. I was the makeup person for the show, became the makeup person for the show because I'm doing her. And I'm doing her face, and she says, she says, ugh, Carlo does this, and Carlo does that, and Carlo does that. And I'm listening to her because Carlo's the guy that did her face before. And I let her talk for like 5 minutes. And then I was like, Miss Kidd, I mean no disrespect, but I am not a short Mexican man. I am a 6'3" West Indian mixed boy. And yeah, I don't do things that way.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've fired people for less. And so I started packing my stuff up to leave. And she says, what are you doing? And I said, I'm leaving. She says, if I fire you, you will know. And so for the last 5 years of her life, I did her hair and makeup.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
a great story.
So I did Mimi LaDuck was one of the first things I did. I worked on Color Purple. A few years later, Cookie Jordan reached out to me about helping her to design the makeup for Fela. So we did that. I went on tour with Fela later, a few years later. I worked on Les Mis. I did some stuff I did Drowsy Chaperone. And so I've mixed in theater. And then I did a lot of opera. So I worked for the Opera Company of Philadelphia, for Tom Watson and for Cookie Jordan. I've done Boston Lyric Opera with my friend Jason. I've done Boston Ballet. I've done New York Philharmonic. I did the makeup for a couple of their productions. Two of my favorite ones was The Cunning Little Vixen, as well as Dancer's Dream. And so I've done theater, and so it just became a part of, I love music. I've always loved music. I love the arts. I modeled for years. So, theater is just, and I love storytelling, and I love stories. And so theater to me is literally me walking into and living into a live story.
That is very cool. You are good at the storytelling. I will give you that part.
And so, going into all of this, coming back. And so I left cosmetics and makeup because it was very taxing to deal with people who were rude, whether it was producers or actors or just people in general, people who you work side by side with. Yeah. And I'm not one for disrespect. I feel like I, as a person, cannot be disrespectful to another human being based on my financial my financial income or what level of life, whatever position I put into doesn't mean that I need to talk down to another human being. And so for me, it's that if you're going to disrespect me, I'm going to hurt your feelings with what I tell you. So before we have to go there, let me just pull myself out of the situation.
Yeah.
And so for several years, I left makeup. I gave away all of my product. I did not touch a makeup brush for 7 years.
Wow.
And so in 2019, Cookie Jordan reached out to me with Eli Prince, who is someone that he and I work together a lot. He's a part of the team. And so they were doing a production called Blue, which is a new production that's coming. It's written by Charles Randolph White, and it's based around a Black affluent family in the South. And so they were going to do it at the Apollo Theater. So that would have made Apollo an official Broadway house because it was a Broadway show. And so Apollo would become an official Broadway house in Harlem.
Cool.
And so Eli was coming on as the hair supervisor. And he said, well, the only way I would take this job is if Kirk Cambridge does the show with me. And so they agreed. And so they reached out to me. Cookie Jordan reached out. She says, Kirk, I want you to do this show. And I said, and I thought about it, and I was like, it's time. Like I started feeling the urge to come back. Because I was like looking at all the travesty that was happening in makeup in theater and just in fashion. I'm like, ugh, it's awful. And that part of me started coming back. So it had gone away for so long. Like, I didn't care. I was like, oh, it's what? I was like, they're like, oh, this makeup is so bad. And I was like, whatever, people can do whatever they want. But this part in 2019, a part of me awoke again. And that magical part that you see creativity started coming back in a very interesting way. And I started looking at it and I was just like, I was like, wow. I was like, why is the makeup so bad? Like, why is it just not, like it's theater. Like people should be beautiful. And if they're a character, then it should be done well. Yeah. So this opportunity come, we did the photo shoot. It was Lynn Whitfield and Leslie Uggams were starring. And so we did the first we did the promo photos, and it was wonderful. It was such a wonderful experience. And it's so funny because I walked into it and I was like, I didn't know what to expect, but I said, Kirk, curate your happy. And if you curate your happy, no matter what happens around you, you acknowledge the bullshit, but you say to yourself, you know what? I see you, but I'm not going to be a part of you right now. And so I walked into it with a fresh face, fresh eyes, and it was absolutely the most wonderful experience. And everyone got along. They were so beautiful and grateful and thankful. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then COVID happened.
Yep.
So COVID happened. The show got postponed a little bit. It was actually going to be directed by Felicia Richard. And we got the shutdown. I was working for Brooklyn Museum, so I was going to take some time off from that job to run the show. The museum agreed. And then 2021, I went to visit Cookie in February. And while I was visiting her in Santa Fe, she said to me, she's like, I want you to help me with this show. Would you run it? And I said, sure. And it was Mary Wives for the public. And it's a story I knew well, the Mary Wives of Windsor. And, I come from a British colony. So of course I know a lot about Shakespeare and history and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And so it was interpreted through the eyes of an African director and an African playwright who adapted the book, Jocelyn. And it was based on African immigrants in Harlem. And I was like, this is such an interesting concept because it's the first time I'm really seeing Black people in a Shakespeare production as leads, right? And the production was so amazing. And the cast was a celebrity star-studded cast. And every single person was absolutely magnificent to work with. They were so humble, they were so gracious, they were very kind, they were kind to each other. And I was like, oh my God, every day was like waking up and walking into a forest of butterflies and birds singing. It literally, I swear to God. And it was just wonderful. There was never arguments or bitterness or bickering. There was none of it at all. And it was just such a pleasure to go to work every day in the park, even with the rain and the thunder. It was wonderful. And I worked with these amazing costume designers. Cookie Jordan did the wigs, cast and crew, and just the company itself were so amazing. And I was like, wow. I was like, it's so interesting. The reason I left was because I felt there was that missing link of this amazingness. And there was this, but I come back into the situation where everything is amazing. It's beyond any expectation I can have. And so I did that from June through September. And then I got ready to do Trouble in Mind. And I walked into the meet and greet for Trouble in Mind. And I didn't tell LaShans anything that I was doing the show. So when she saw me, she's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm the makeup designer. And she's like, she started screaming out so loud. And so again, walked the Roundabout Theater, so gracious, so amazing, so accommodating. And I say it unabashedly that Roundabout Theater is my first Broadway home, because they gave me my first show. And I gladly go back and do anything for them. You know, like I end up doing birthday candles for them with Deborah Messing. And again, everything's been just so amazing. So in the last 13 months, I've done 14 shows.
Wow. In
13 months, you know, and so, you know, worked my way up, did all these other shows, you know, POTUS, For Colored Girls, A Strange Loop, Skin of Our Teeth, we did Into the Woods off Broadway at City Center. Again, when I tell you, every show that I have done in this last 13 months every cast has been absolutely amazing and gracious. There's not one person on the cast or crew that I could say has not been absolutely amazing and a delight to work with. And to know me is to know that if I say that, it's the truth, because Lord, I have a mouth on me. And I have no qualms about telling people off, but in a respectful way, of course. But it has been an amazing journey. And to come back and do a show, we did it in a few weeks ago. We did it a few months ago at City Center for 2 weeks. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, we're opening on Broadway. You know, and it's been absolutely amazing. Every night is amazing. All the actors are amazing. Patina Miller is a gem. You know, I told her the other night, I was like, there's 2 women that I consider like my inner woman. And the first one is Grace Jones, because when I found I was a little kid when I found out that she was West Indian, and I was like, oh my God, because she's the first dark-skinned woman I ever saw in a movie that was like beautiful and powerful and strong. And then she was Jamaican. And I was like, oh my God, she's West Indian. So she immediately became my inner woman. And then years later in my teens, Ashwari Arai won Miss Universe. And she was dark-skinned for an Indian, right, in that kind of setting, but she also spoke to another part of my culture. So my mother is British, Scottish, and Black, and my father is Punjabi, Madrasi, and Kalinago. Okay. And so, you know, it was just like these 2 women. There's a blue Black woman and there's an Indian woman, and they're both strong and beautiful. Yeah. And Patina Miller, like, I met so many amazing women. Like LaShans is one of the women that I really love as well. But Patina Miller really has a special place in my heart. And she's like, I said, you've now been added to the other two women in my life, who is Grace Jones, Aishwarya Rai, and now Bettina Miller.
Congratulations just on all of that. That's a fantastic, career and so far, and obviously you have tons more ahead of you. So that's the first one I want to do is just congratulations.
Thank you.
Everything. I'm curious. So when you get hired for a show, when I'm directing a show, I can look at a set and go, okay, I have an idea. Costumes, I have an idea. Even lighting, makeup, I'd be like, boof, I'm gonna step back. How much control is it when you are hired? Do you have ultimate control, or how does it work? I'm very curious.
What's so funny is that every production that I've come back to has given me total autonomy. And so for me, my process is, I want to know the era. Mm-hmm. I want to know the specific time. And then from that, I talk to the costume designer, and I look at their imagery and what they have drafted already. And then I talk to the wig designer, Cookie Jordan, most of the time. Sometimes it's Matthew so far, or whoever. And we kind of like figure out like what the hair looks like, what it should look like, what the era is. Are we sticking with the era? Or are we going a little bit more modern? And then the ultimate decider is the actor. And so, and what their skill level is. Because I could design, the most glamorous makeup in the world. Yeah. But if that actor is not able to do it themselves, because it's like here in opera, we do the makeup on the actors. In theater, they do it themselves. Okay. Right? Yeah. And so for me, what I've learned is I've created a formula for each actor, which is different, for their makeup application, their makeup process. And so there's some people who can do 3 shadows. There's some people who could do 4. There's people who are they've been doing it forever. So they could do whatever I ask. Yeah. And then there are the people who are novices who are like, oh, I just do an eyeliner. So then I pick 2 shadows or 1 shadow and say, okay, we do it this way. And then they look at it and like, oh my God, I look like I have a full beat on. I'm like, no, it's all about your technique. And so they leave. And so once I become comfortable with one thing, I add something else to it. So it's almost like making a croissant.
Oh, yeah.
So it's levels to it. And so if that person is at a base level, then you give them things that are going to be comfortable for them. Also, what I do is I tend to build their look from their kits. So I'm not adding anything new to what they're already used to. Mm-hmm. So if you're used to it, I'm gonna go with that. And then show specific things. And then they walk away with so much information. I cannot tell you the number of actresses who message me, call me, text me, WhatsApp me, social media message me to say, I did the makeup that you taught me, and everyone thinks I look amazing. I went to a photo shoot and they're like, who did your face? And they're like, I did my face. And they couldn't believe it. Or they went on a red carpet and they did the makeup that I taught them, and their pictures come out amazing. Yeah. And for me, that is my win.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool. The comparison I would give it is like a vocal coach in the background. You give them the tools, how to do it, and then you let them, and that's why I wanted to interview you, because again, the people behind the ones that get on the magazines or on the stage or in front of the camera, no one knows who you are, and you deserve to get as much credit as anybody for what you do. So again, thank you for coming on and introducing yourself to me and everybody else.
Thank you.
So it sounds like from what it is, it's the actors have makeup rehearsals even, and come in and they present their kit to you, and they have to figure this out. And that.
So my process is, so we come in, I have about 45 minutes with each actor, and they bring their kits. And from their kits, we start building. And then I would say, okay, we'll change this blush. I don't like this blush. And I try to do things that are going to complement them. And so when it's an era specific look, I do a ton of research. I love research. I've ever since I was young, before there was the internet, there was the library.
Yeah.
And so I've always been obsessed with learning the history of makeup. What was the first things used? Like, a lot of people don't know that the first lip color, the first color that people were using was carmine. Okay. Which comes from the female beetle, a dead female beetle. And so in the Elizabethan era is when it became really popular, and they had several shades of it from lightest to darkest. Mm-hmm. And back then, makeup was illegal.
Oh.
Only prostitutes wore makeup. So what happened is that there was a woman who was very famous in the UK at the time. She was Madame something, I can't remember her name, but she really wasn't British. She really wasn't French. But back then you could just, there was no internet, so you couldn't do research on anybody. And so she was Madame, like, let's say like her name was like Madame Lecroix. And she was a makeup artist, she called herself something like Visage something. Well, anyway, she was like this, she would make you younger, and you could get, older women could attract men. She would make you 20 years younger. So that was where she started using powder, this white powder, the lead-based powder on women's faces that made them white, and they would keep it on for up to a week. And she would add a slight bit of blush, of rouge and lip color. And so it was also very subtle because it was illegal. But the upper crust went to her on a regular basis. And so one of her advertising was this old woman in white face with rosy cheeks and lips, and she had a young man kissing her feet. That was her ad. Yeah. And it worked. So until she was found out and was run out of London, but made a fortune. I think she was eventually beheaded. Yeah, for fraud.
Okay.
Years later. So I love history, and I love, like they used to use, they would burn coal and use it as eyeliner in Egyptian times. And so there was all of these flowers and fruits that they would crush and create lip color and face paint and stuff from. And so, for me, I love history. And so to combine makeup and history together makes me very happy.
What's been one of the most difficult makeup jobs that you've had to do? It was so intricate, but it was so satisfying as well.
I think when we designed, I did a project for Confederates, which was at Signature Theater, and my assistant and I had to create scars, like lash marks, like slavery lash marks on the back of an actor. And so there was a whole talk about doing prosthetics and doing this and having it painted on every night. And I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And so we end up coming up with temporary tattoos that were in 3D. So I called my assistant, who's brilliant. My assistant's like this brilliant special effects guy. And so I was like, can we do this in 3D? And he's like, I don't know if it's ever been done, but I'm sure we could do it. And so I sent him the sketches, and he was like, he tried it. So we did it a couple of times. And, it was like a lot of work trying to get the colors right so that it refracts the way it needs to refract. And from a distance, it needs to be red and look like what it needs to look like. Like this kid he's been beaten with a cat and nine tail, and his back is ripped up, right? And that I think was one of the most difficult, because it was just like, I would dream about it at night. I would dream about it at night. And then I think the second one for me was when I was working with Camille directed for College Girls. And so reading the story, knowing the story, and the girls were all going to be in different color palettes. So there was a blue lady, a yellow lady, a red lady. I don't know if you know the play, but it's this. So each of the 7 women represent a different color. They don't have a name; they're a color. And so I was talking to the costume designer, and she literally and I had the same vision of what this needs to look like. And so each woman would have an accent of the color they represent in their makeup, right? And so in my head, I was like, I already had it planned. I went in, I executed, it was stunning. And then I got upstairs and Camille was just like, she's like, I don't not like it, but it's not what I envisioned. I wanted to die. No one's ever not liked my makeup. And I was like, how dare she? I was like, how dare she? And I was like, and I really thought about quitting the job. I really thought about it. It's just like, I literally created this most amazing makeup for these women. The women all loved it. Everybody in the theater, like, and Camille was just like, it's not what I envisioned. Not that she hated it, but it was just like, I've gotten so used to like everybody loving everything that I do. Yeah. And like hitting it on the nail from the first minute it walks on stage. They're like, oh my God, it's stunning. It's perfect. Because I understand lighting, Yeah. And so I came home tonight and I was gonna quit. And then something said, shut your fucking ass and just go home and just shut your ass. Shut up, Kirk. Yeah. Go home and get rid of your ego. Trust your process. Trust that you are where you need to be in this moment and let it go. Mm-hmm. So I come home, I shower, I drink my tea, I fall asleep in front of the television, and in my sleep, the answer came to me. And so I got up in the morning, I was super excited. I was like, okay, Camille, I got something for you, girl. And she's like, I'm seeing more natural. And I was like, on stage? Then they should just go with nothing on. This is what my thought. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I know a happy balance between what the women want, what the actors want, and what she wants. And so I go in and I say to the girls, I said, pull everything back. Do whispers of color. And they're like, a whisper? I said, yeah. I said, basically think of just like a slight wash of color. And it got on stage 30 minutes later, and Camille's like, this is amazing. I was like, in my head, I was like, but it's the same color palettes. But it's interesting how the eye, and from that experience with Camille, I realized that I always go to the director and be like, what do you see? And let them give me their vision, which is always the case. But for some reason with Camille and I, it got lost in translation, because I came in, I was actually working on 5 shows at the same time. Wow. So I was doing Skin of Our Teeth, which was a monster show. It was at 28 actors that had to have 3 looks each. Oh, so 3 specific looks. They had to transition throughout the show. And so I designed 28 by 3. Wow. But can I tell you that was the easiest show? Of course. It was the easiest show to do with the most people. And I was like, oh my God. And it looked amazing. And I was doing Skin of Our Teeth, A Strange Loop for colored girls. And I had birthday candles. And it was all around the same time. And everyone's like, how are you doing this? So I had my assistant, and then I had a second assistant and a third assistant. It was insanity, but it was absolutely amazing. But from the experiences that we sometimes coin as difficult situations, I've learned that those difficult situations really help you to hone your craft. And so with that interaction for colored girls, I really learned a lot from that experience. I think that's like the best experience I've had, and the most I've learned since I came back was through that experience.
Nice. Being able to grow like that and recognize it, right? Like you said, you could have gone and said, I quit. You know what? You don't know what you're talking about.
That was the plan.
But you held on, right? You just went, wait, and gave it you let it breathe.
But I had to trust the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I had to remember that I walked through Central Park having this conversation with the higher power, and made a promise that I was going to let the higher power lead the way, and I will follow. Yeah. And the higher power has led me this way. It has led me to, at that point, it was what, 10 shows? I was 9 shows at that point in a year, in less than a year. And this was now my 10th show. And I was led right all along, but here am I questioning what's in front of me instead of seeing it as an opportunity to grow. And I have to come home and really check the ego and be like, no, we're not going down that road. See what this is, and I had to sleep on it. And in my sleep, the answer came. And the next morning, she loved it.
Yeah, nice. So now that Into the Woods is open, what's in the future? What's on Kirk's plate right now, or can you say? I'm sure.
So Into the Woods. I'm the hair and makeup supervisor, and it's gonna go until September 21st. Okay. And then I'm gonna go on vacation. We're going to Europe for a couple of weeks.
Nice.
And visit some family and some friends. And then I come back to do another project, which I can't talk. I could talk about off, but I'll tell you.
I'm used to that.
Yeah. I have a couple. It's so funny. There's a few projects. So there's one project that happens in September, late September, that I'm going into. And then there's a musical that's coming to Broadway that I'm going to be designing my first musical.
Nice.
And then I have a second musical that's coming to Broadway.
Wow.
And there's a few other projects that are coming. And then someone from Indeed, a producer, reached out to me about a major project, historical project that's coming, that's a musical. And they said that I was the first on their list. And I was like, okay.
You know what? Though you can't say any of this, that's fantastic that you're going to be working and you're going
to. Yeah.
That's the important.
So it's been a great place. And I think one of the things that I hold on to all the time is that my process is not the same as everyone else's. And what I bring to the table is not the same thing that someone else. There's space for all of us in this industry to do what we do. And so I'm in my moment. I don't look at anybody else's work. I don't, it is what it is. And I focus on doing my thing and staying in my lane.
You know what? Again, congratulations, Kirk. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me and introducing yourself to the world and me and enlightening us on stuff that I'm pretty sure most of us have no idea about the background and what goes on in the inner workings and all that stuff. So thank you so much for coming on today, Kirk.
Thank you for having me.
But before we go, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. Now, there's no right or wrong answers, but we will get to know you better. And the listeners are quite judgy. So they might not agree with what you say, but that's okay. That's their problem.
Yeah, that's okay.
Exactly. So question number 1. Here we go. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? It could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, actor, stage manager, costume designer. It could be somebody famous or not famous, maybe like a teacher or somebody like that in your life. Who has had some great influence on you?
In theater?
Sure. Yeah.
I think in theater, there's two people. There is Thelma Pollard, who was the hair and makeup designer for Phantom of the Opera. There's Cookie Jordan, hair and makeup extraordinaire, theater diva. Those two women have really given me opportunities, opened doors for me, because I am as much as I could think of, the only makeup designer on Broadway. Everybody else is a hair and makeup designer. I am the only person who has that tag of makeup designer where I only deal with makeup. And so these two women really have opened the door, and have Cookie Jordan created the opportunity by when productions go to her and say, oh, we want you to create hair and makeup. She said, I don't design makeup anymore. My makeup designer is Kirk, Pesche. And so we have the same agent. And so she created a space, a door. She opened a door for me that normally would not have been open. You know what I mean? Like, it would have just been the makeup design. You would have been designing under a hair person, but not getting the recognition because you're an associate or something. But she's really given me, Cookie Jordan really has given me the opportunity to do what I do, especially in the last 13 months. I've, had gone from not doing makeup to now having 14 major shows, not small shows, mind you. These are like reopen Broadway, the first show to reopen Broadway, and now Into the Woods, that is the talk of the town, and the hottest ticket in the world is Into the Woods. Everybody wants to see it. So Cookie Jordan definitely, and Thelma Pollard laid the groundwork.
And what about off? You were going to say somebody off out of theater.
Off, I would say not off, but like my grandmother, Isola Cyrus, really set the foundation of my life. And she taught me what it was to be strong, to be determined, to know my worth, and to speak my mind.
Nice. You know what? 1 point for the answers and an extra point for the grandmother. That's an awesome answer. So 2 points for the first question. Question number 2. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. Back in the Grenadines, your family owned an eatery?
So we owned a restaurant.
Okay.
We owned a bunch of things.
Okay, so my question is, so you obviously know food. What traditional dishes should I try if I'm ever down there?
Okay, so if you're in St. Vincent, one of the things that I love is whale meat. So once a year, we're allowed to catch a whale. St. Vincent is one of the few countries in the Caribbean that hunts whales still. So it's still a tradition. And so the old whalers are still there, but it's a dying art, really. But when you get some dove whale, man, it is like duck meets beef meets pork. I mean, it's so good. It melts in your mouth.
Really?
And then the whale oil, if you drink whale oil, like, you will never get sick.
I am very curious now.
And then you have to, and with the whale meat, there's specific people that will have it all year round because they'll dove it and have it stashed away. Yeah. So it's like, if you're on the island of Beckway, you can ask somebody, and I guarantee you somebody's grandmother will have a piece of whale hideaway somewhere. And then the other thing I love pilau. So pilau is where you brown the meat and you add peas and carrots and stuff. That's like one of my favorite dishes. And my grandmother used to make it with carrot slaw, but it's like grated carrots with tons of garlic and mayo. I still love that shit to this day.
It sounds good.
And then the other thing I love is I love fried jackfish and roast breadfruit. So breadfruit was a fruit that was brought from Tahiti by Captain Bligh. He did 3 tries to bring it, and all of the plants died on the voyage. And on his last voyage from Tahiti, he had to go ashore and ended up in St. Vincent. And he had 1 tree that was surviving, and he planted it in St. Vincent. And so to this day, there's still one the first breadfruit plant's offspring still lives in the botanical gardens in my country. So St. Vincent was where the breadfruit tree was planted in the Caribbean, and then it was exported to the other islands as a cheap way to feed the slaves. So breadfruit is one of my favorite things. So breadfruit and fried fish, or breadfruit and stewed chicken back. Oh yes, you're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready.
I don't know. I'm very curious about all this stuff. So
well, you have to go with me to get the full experience.
It's true.
Because then you're with my family and my friends. So you really get, I always say one of the things that I want to do eventually is to do a television show where I show people my version of the Caribbean. I find that a lot of what we see is the watered down version, the tourist version. I want people to experience my Caribbean, the food I eat, the people I'm around, the places I go, how I see the Caribbean from my perspective. Because as a Caribbean person, the only way to experience it is through my eyes. And so I want to show the world what we as Caribbean people really are, and that each island is in itself an individual place that has its own nuances, its own things going on. Our carnivals are different. The things that bind us as Caribbean people are music, laughter, and carnival.
Very nice. That's fantastic. Okay, there's another place I have to put on my list to go to. So
yes,
awesome. One more point. Awesome. All right, question number 3, the most divisive question of them all to people: food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? Which is worse?
Cell phones in the theater.
Okay. Have you had an experience with that?
I was watching. I have so much experience with that. So in every time I go, so I watch the shows during previews, right? So I sit in the production seats and I watch the show. And every single show I've done, all of the 14 shows I've done, except for Into the Woods, because they were more strict. 12 of those shows, there was always somebody in the audience with a cell phone that rang. Ugh. And sometimes they had the unmitigated gumption to answer the phone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like, you can't silence your phone. And they do ask you to turn your phones off.
I know. Every show you go to, they tell you right at the beginning, turn it off. But
there always is one, as my grandmother said, one jackass who feel that they're above reproach and that they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Correct answer, by the way. I would have accepted both are terrible, but still another one.
I mean, both are terrible, but the cell phones annoy me. The food part is that you cannot be opening a package during a performance. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have that, like, I can hear you.
Yeah, I know.
I can hear you on the stage, honey. You're like, what the hell are you opening?
But I'm being so quiet. No, you're not.
No, you're not. Because what happens is that what people fail to realize is that certain Broadway houses are built to amplify sound.
Yeah.
So it's going to amplify the sound.
Yeah. I
mean, you cannot hear a mouse chirp in a theater. You hear it backstage.
Yeah.
And it's like a lion roaring.
Kirk, 4 out of 3 points. Congratulations. There's no prize, but you have bragging rights to everybody.
Bragging rights is great. I could do that.
Again, Kirk, Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to meet you and learn all about what you do and expose the rest of the world to, you know, your talents. So thank you.
Jean-Paul, it has been an absolute pleasure. You're amazing. This is, I mean, this is needed. This is definitely needed because I feel like a lot of times there is no avenue for the people behind the scenes to tell the world what goes on. It's so funny. Cookie Jordan made a comment that they were talking, and she was saying, you know, it's really sad that in Broadway, she's like, you know, they were talking about, she's like, in Broadway, there's no Tony for a hair designer or a makeup designer. And so a costume designer gets an award. And one of the beautiful things about Montana Blanco, who won the Tony for Best Costumes for Skin of Her Teeth, is that he's like, you know, this award is not mine, it is all of ours. And I think that's so beautiful. Like even last night, he said it again when we were at dinner. But, you know, it's really interesting that, you know, as many shows that I've done in the last 13 months, there's not been any recognition. Like there's been no article, there's been no nothing. It's just like, oh, you see beautiful. It's just like without hair, yes, you have a costume, but without hair on a costume, face on a costume, it's just a costume, you know, and all of it, everything, all of us in the theater, from sound to lighting to set design, costume design, the people who dress the actors, we all make this happen, you know? And so I think recognition needs to be shared across the board, but hey, that's why so many people are going to television.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you are so correct. You all deserve, without each one of you, one of the pieces, it's just not complete.
But you know something what's interesting, Jean-Paul, is that even the other shows that matriculate off of the Tonys, you know, like whatever the other show, the other award ceremonies are, they don't have it for hair and makeup either.
No.
Which is interesting because you're saying that you're different, but how are you different?
That's a whole other interview to go over all that.
Yeah,
we need another hour to talk about that.
You're perpetuating the same categories that the Tonys does. So you're not different at all. You're the same.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Again, Kirk, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. We were just speaking with Kirk Cambridge and Del Pesche, makeup designer for Broadway, TV, magazines, pretty much everything. If you need your makeup done, you just go contact him. Tune in next week as we'll be speaking with another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.